Morton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And could I give a big hello to the Bowen Hills branch of the Australian Labor Party who are listening in tonight. And I know the members of that branch, like many other people, saw just over 5 months ago the Prime Minister Turnbull invoke that rarely used power contained in Section 5 of the Constitution, where the Prime Minister Turnbull asked the Governor-General to recall Parliament for an extra 3 sitting weeks. An extraordinary request. Other than a general election, Section 5 has only been invoked on 4 occasions since 1961. 2 were so the Queen could open the new sessions of Parliament, and 1 was on the death of Prime Minister Harold Holt, and the 3rd was an unusual situation when Prime Minister John Gordon didn't have his government's program fully prepared for the first sitting after the 1969 election. The reason given by Prime Minister Turnbull in March to warrant such an unusual request was so that Parliament be recalled to give consideration to 2, and I quote, important parcels of industrial legislation. Those pieces of legislation were the ABCC Bill and the Registered Organisations Bill. Parliament was recalled on Monday 18th of April for a period of 3 weeks. The 2 bills were again put before the Parliament and both were again rejected by the Senate. Prime Minister Turnbull then advised the Governor-General to exercise his power under Section 57 of the Constitution to dissolve both houses of Parliament simultaneously to enable election of both houses, and didn't that work out well? Again, not a power often invoked. This was only the 7th time since Federation since it's been used, and strangely, after such a dramatic prelude to the election being called, there was barely a discussion by the Coalition about either the ABCC Bill or the Registered Organisations Bill during the election. Post-election, we have Prime Minister Turnbull with a scarce majority of 1 in the House of Reps, a reduced number in the Senate and an increased crossbench. The ABCC Bill will undoubtedly again be put before Parliament. A bill originally introduced in 2005, Labor opposed its introduction then and opposed it again now. The ABCC, implemented by the Howard government, said to be a response to recommendations of the $60 million Coal Royal Commission, a commission established by the Howard government to investigate the building and construction industry, supposedly a hotbed of intimidation, lawlessness, thuggery and violence at the time. There are quotes. Curiously, not 1 criminal prosecution, not even a finding of guilt resulted from that Royal Commission. As a point of difference, the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse, commenced under Prime Minister Gillard, has made over 1,700 referrals to authorities so far. So let's revisit the period after the ABCC was introduced in 2005. Building industry fatalities jumped 95% between 2006 and 2008. Cases were brought against the CFMEU and other unions, resulting in over $5 million in fines and millions more in court costs. That's good for lawyers, but not for the building industry and those that protect the workers in that industry. The ABCC was condemned 8 times by the International Labour Organisation for bias and for breaching conventions that Australia has signed. They were found to have unlawfully interviewed 203 people. When the Gillard and Rudd governments removed the majority of the ABCC's powers and implemented the Fair Work Australia Act, the Fair Work Australia model, we saw industrial disputes go down, we saw fatalities go down, and we saw productivity increase. Labor abhors corruption and criminal activity in any industry, including the building and construction industry. And I say that with 3 brothers who work in the construction industry. But the ABCC is not designed to deal with breaches of the criminal law or corruption of any kind. It was set up by the Howard government to enforce civil laws and industrial relations legislation. During the period that the ABCC was in place, there were 330 deaths on construction sites. The investigation set in motion by the ABCC into those deaths totalled 0. Not one. Not one investigation was thought warranted out of 330 deaths of ordinary Australians going about their jobs in the construction industry. It was recently brought home to me how important it is for union representatives to have access to building sites. I met with Andrew Ramsey, who is a Workplace Health and Safety Coordinator with the CFMEU. He's also the chairman of the board of the Asbestos Disease Support Society. As the Workplace Health and Safety Coordinator for the CFMEU, Andrew, who's listening in, was at home one weekend when he received a phone call from the building site in Brisbane that will become the new executive building in William Street. The person on the other end of the phone said that they thought there was asbestos on the building site in this century. Andrew said he was disbelieving, knowing that asbestos was banned in Australia and was illegal to import it. He could not imagine how there would be asbestos on a Brisbane construction site. Investigations were made and it was confirmed, sadly, that indeed there was material on the site that contained asbestos. The particular piece of material being used and that had been used by workers contained 60% asbestos. To put that in context, the old fibro sheets that many of us had in houses, we can all remember, it contained about 10 to 15% asbestos. The material had been imported from China, had been manufactured to specifications to fit a particular situation on the site. When it arrived, it did not fit. The builders, being good workers, innovative and agile, took to the material with an electric saw to make it fit. It was only then that one of the observant people on site became aware of the asbestos being present in the material. The site was immediately shut down, and through his involvement with the Asbestos Disease Support Society, Andrew has seen firsthand the devastation that asbestos causes to the health of the person exposed to it. An insidious substance. It is impossible to know you are being exposed to it until it is too late. The asbestos fibres are so small that they appear like a pinprick on a magnified follicle of human hair. And, Deputy Speaker, I'd like to table a photograph that shows the relative size of the follicle of hair. And I've made the... Sorry.
Is leave granted?
Leave is granted.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Member for Corangamite. Exposure to asbestos can cause asbestosis and mesothelioma. Both are deadly diseases, often fatal. No cure for either disease. Sufferers of asbestosis can live for decades, but their quality of life substantially deteriorates. Mesothelioma is a cancer. The prognosis for sufferers is dismal. They sometimes only live for a matter of months beyond their diagnosis. They suffer terribly as the disease progresses. It is our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters working on construction sites who are becoming the latest unwitting victims of both of these insidious diseases. When we hear members complain about lost time being from building sites due to shutdowns, they don't actually understand that on their watch, this illegal substance is somehow making its way past border control and into Australia. That shutting down these building sites when asbestos is suspected is imperative to protect the health of our workers, and surely that is a crucial thing. That the diligence of our union delegates ensuring that asbestos, a banned substance, is not used in Australia's buildings is not only protecting the workers on the site, but also the rest of us who may live or work in these buildings once they are complete. And we know that there are sites like the Children's Hospital in Perth that have this material. There are 69 job sites across Australia that material containing asbestos has been delivered to. An appalling situation. And we have the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, bizarrely, blaming the CFMEU for driving developers to use illegal and dangerous products on their building sites. I heard that quote and could not believe it. How absurd. After speaking with Andrew Ramsey from the CFMEU, I've reflected on why it is absolutely necessary that union delegates be allowed onto work sites. Can you imagine if a construction worker was not able to have a union delegate come on site to check on materials that are suspected to be asbestos? If their only option is to go to a supervisor employed by the construction company, how much joy will they have? How likely would it be that the site is shut down to protect the health of the workers? Construction companies, even the most worker-friendly of them, and there are many, are driven by profit, obviously. That is how this asbestos-ridden material is finding its way onto building sites across Australia. Sadly, because it is cheaper. Using it will increase the profits for the company. I know that working in the construction industry can be dangerous. I had my brother have two work colleagues killed right alongside him many years ago. The workers have to trust that systems are set up in a safe way for them to do their jobs. I've never worked in the building industry, as I said, but my three brothers still do. And I also have a sister who's an electrician that occasionally works on construction sites as well. In fact, one of my brothers worked on the construction of Parliament House, Deputy Speaker. My younger brother, who also works in the building industry, as I said, when he was working at Twin Towns, had the two colleagues killed right alongside him, and it also injured his back and psychologically impacted on him for many, many years. So every day when he hears of a worker killed, to this day, in fact, I've got text from him today, it's always very traumatic for him. And I can't imagine what it's like to be inches away from being killed, how that would impact on you when you go back into these workplaces. I know that the construction industry is tough on workers. It's physically demanding and can be extremely dangerous. The The more costs are cut to improve the bottom line, the more dangerous it becomes for workers as safe practices are abandoned, and also it sometimes can be the cowboy construction tenderers who get the projects. So we need to protect workers in the construction industry. It's been left to Labor and the great union movement to stand up for workers. The ABCC legislation will not protect workers. The Turnbull government will not protect workers, but Labor definitely will.